Title of this morning's Dharma talk is, the topic actually is gossip. Gossip. Back channel, is it? Palaver, is that it? Palaver. Yeah, palaver. So we all know kind of what that is. A lot of extra talking language. The plus side, it's socially, it helps bond us together as communities and so on. So there has its upside. Chit chat about things, small talk, as they say, but can also be difficult and can cause harm. Even though the intention wasn't to do that, it can cause disruption because someone hearing something that someone else said about something else and something else, that tends to get mixed. As I talked, I think yesterday about, what was I talking about?
Remixing thoughts.
Huh?
Remixing thoughts.
Remixing thoughts. We tend to take the thoughts that come in, instead of just using that, then we mix it up with our own ideas, our own interpretations, and so on, and so it gets becomes quite a patchwork. So even the Buddha, in the early days, in the Anguttara Nikaya, talked about right speech, samyak, or correct, complete speech. And if I can remember them, there's 5 marks there. True, timely, gentle, purposeful, and with a mind of loving kindness. So this is sounds like the Mahayana path to me, yet he was the founder of the Buddhist path. So there's all kinds of ways this idea of gossip can show up. The word gossipy is about something where it seems to be there's a lot of extra talk about something just for someone's entertainment or for as I said earlier, as a social bonding, being with somebody and hanging out and having a good time. So there's not like there's something that needs, oh my gosh, we need to correct that. But I would say in this monastery where people live as temple residents, monastery residents, it's pretty much at a minimum here. We don't really find a lot of that. We find some, but not much, a little bit. There might be quite a bit going on that I don't even know anything about, and that's fine, because if it doesn't reach me, then it's probably not too bad. I have big ears. Do I have big ears? I don't know. So we can have questions about this or discussion. So it's not so much about making someone, stopping that. It's about not even with ourselves. The way I teach this is not so much about to stop doing that. It's be aware of when that starts to arise and notice how that functions. And that way you can use it as a Dharma gate. It can be an entrance for you to use your awareness of that to see all the way around it, to see the way in which that arises. Get rid of it too soon based on the concept, based on the naming of it. Oh, that's gossip. Well, I can't do that. That's gossip. I'm not saying that. I'm saying if it tends to come up and you notice it, or possibly someone else points it out to you, say, or maybe you notice that the person you're, shall we say, gossiping with is not helping you by, hanging on your every word, or might be maybe turning away a little bit or dropping their gaze a little bit. It's just a way of so that you can be helped to see that that kind of chattering. And my first teacher, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, who used to talk about subconscious gossip. You sit on the cushion, look at the wall. You have, using the modern psychological term, subconscious, gossipy kind of qualities happening in the mind stream. Ideas about this and that, and they're just quite often it's just something to fill up the space and entertain us in some kind of way. So This might also be one of the reasons that, especially in the Tibetan tradition, that there's a lot of secrecy in the teachings. You can't just, maybe now you can just about find everything on Amazon. But in the previous times, even when I first began this path many years ago in the early 70s, you couldn't find out anything about anything. You'd be in one room, and next door there's lots of bells and whistles, not whistles, but bells and drums going on in the other room, and you'd say, "What is that?" So that's just another practice. Yeah, but what are they doing? Says, "Well, they're just practicing. They're doing another practice." And you knew that you were being kind of dismissed. But then also your inspiration around the practice was you're here to practice. You're not here to argue with what's being done. So we'll just go along with it. So I did. Eventually I found myself doing that kind of practice, ringing bells and playing with little hand drums and so on. When I say playing with it, I don't mean to be dismissive. I'm just saying using that as part of your awareness practice, using that as a part of the ancient technology that the Indians, ancient Indians, Tibetans, people in Nepali people, all the people in the Himalaya area, along with the ancient indigenous shamanistic path of Pern, or B-O-N with an umlaut over the O. And I think it's pronounced Pern, but you can correct me if you like. Or we could just gossip about it. So the idea there, I think, was maybe to keep that from getting out of hand, so that when people did focus on it, there wasn't a lot of gossip around. Well, why are they doing this? Or why did they use a larger drum? Or should I be doing a Vajrasattva practice or Chenrezig practice? Or which one of these why are they doing this and I'm doing, So my idea there, my understanding of it, looking back over the many years, is that not helpful to chit-chat or chatter, gossip about the different forms. Makes it more difficult for us to actually practice a form if there's lots of chatter about that and evaluation based on anything. I don't know, for those of you who may have heard of Dorje Shugden. Any of you heard of Dorje Shugden? Well, that's good. The gossip didn't reach as far. So Dorje Shugden is you can read about it. I really don't know how to describe it without actually using a bunch of gossip about it. But it's some aspect of the teachings that it came out of centuries ago, where this particular this deity yoga is supposed to be superior or something, and this is something His Holiness Dalai Lama does not agree with particularly. So I won't go any further than that. You can just remember, write that name down. You can look it up if you want to see what has happened there. It's not that there isn't some kind of truth going on, but it's harmful to go in and disagree and just like on Twitter, Facebook, and all these new modern things, you can go on there and just say anything about anybody. It's extremely heavily gossipy kind of material. We see all kinds of things about teachers being, especially in the Me Too movement, we see so many things happening where teachers are accused. And just because someone's accused, even though there's several people doing it, doesn't necessarily mean that what is being described has happened. It also, we don't go the other way, but we don't look the other way and just assume, well, that's gossipy. No, it should be looked at. Had people talk about me publicly to others, and when I ask who that is, they say, I can't tell you. So that's not particularly helpful to do that, to say something about someone and then pass it on to someone else, and then it becomes gossip. Well, I can't really say who said that, but that's what they said, and as if that's true. Makes it difficult. So in our situation here, everyone, don't have a lot of students, but I don't know, but I have a couple dozen maybe at the most, probably, not very many. I don't want a lot of students, as you've heard me say. I get worn out even quicker. But each student is treated individually and is working with their mind and with practices that, based on my doing it, my years of experience, I have people working with their mind in different ways. Some people are just doing shikantaza, just sit down, sit still, watch what moves, nothing else. Some people are actually doing a white Tara practice or a form of deity yoga. Some people are doing mantra repetition, and sometimes mantra repetition that we kind of invent or make up, not just something that's comes out of some kind of strong cultural support. So, as you've heard me say, and as it says in the third of the pure precepts, be with all things. Anything that arises, be with that. That doesn't mean accept it. That's not being with it. That doesn't mean reject it. That's not being with it. And that doesn't mean ignoring it or turning away. That's not being with it. Just be with it. That's just about impossible to do if you're carrying a big baggage of me, and me and my stuff, me and what I like, me and what I don't like, and my, I'm right, they're wrong kind of situation. And when I say that, I'm also saying, as those of you have heard me speak before, I'm not saying you need to get rid of that. We need to be aware of that rather than to. If you get rid of something too soon, you haven't really gotten rid of it. You've gotten rid of the concept of it, and it can it can masquerade as awakening. I've met people, perhaps you've met people, who think they're awake. If you think you're awake, you are not. Let me help you out there. But thinking you're awake is just that. It's thinking. Thinking. Actual awakening is not. What's my next word? It's not too bad. Sokuzan said actual awakening is. Well, I said actual awakening is. He said a frog. Is that what you said? Frog? No, you said a thought. Oh, I missed that. You said a thought.
It's not a thought.
Not a thought. So actual awakening, what I was going to say, not to make light of it, what I was going to say is it's not separate. And so being not separate, you don't get anything. You get no credential. You don't get to be some special person who knows things other people know. If you think that you're awake and other people are not awake, this is it's an understanding. It could be something to that. You may have had a insight, or when the Zen tradition is called kensho, or insight into your fundamental nature, your original face. You may have had a flash of that, and that flash could have lasted for months, days, weeks, could even go longer than that, possibly. But it will fade. Everything that shows up fades. Our bodies show up, they're going down. Maybe not this year, maybe in 50 years. Awakening doesn't do anything. It's not an experience. Experiential has some experiential qualities to it, but it in itself, which is not even an it. And if you think of it a different way, I'm fine with that. But practice another way. Don't believe anything I say. I'm not here to convince you of anything. This is not something I want you to believe. Do something else. So at this point, any questions about gossip? Yes.
What's the payoff of gossip?
Could be many things. Could be a feeling of belonging. Could be a feeling of sharing an interesting story. It could be not particularly harmful to anyone, but it could be just something we're chatting about. Not too much of that happens here. A little, but not much. I'm saying in the monastery. Yes.
So how would we distinguish between gossip and passing along accurate, important information?
Say more. I'm following you. Say more.
Well, I think it goes back to what you were saying about, was it complete speech, the 5 qualities of complete speech?
Yeah.
And the first one you said was true.
Is it true?
How do we know what is true?
If you don't know if it's true, don't open your mouth. Don't say it.
I think we have examples in this day and age of people who
Yeah.
who say whatever comes into their mind, and there's no chance to rebut it on the spot. And some people take that as truth.
I know.
Um,
That's how fascism got started. Lies. More.
but I just get a sense of anxiety and when I can't seem to determine what to believe,
Okay,
or
so,
what's true and what
so
isn't.
the determining part is too quick. The determining part is something that the self-centeredness wants to know so that it will be right, so that there's some kind of reference point. And the wisdom mind is not concerned with true and false in its relative, because what's true today is going to be false tomorrow. It's always shifting back and forth. The very nature of relative truth it's like square dance. So it's not that one side isn't really true right now, and then later on that will dissolve and something else will be true. But the best thing, when I say best, I'm just saying to consider this, the most complete, that's the Sanskrit word for this, for right speech is samyak, or complete or thorough. It doesn't mean right as opposed to wrong. It means thoroughgoing, really seeing everything. And the only way you can really see everything is to not be particularly seduced by your thought patterns, which drag you off into some kind of artificial or temporary truth. Seems to be true. I'm going to go with that. Don't go with anything. You'll still be here. Don't have to believe it. Don't disbelieve it. Don't look away. And then the very nature of the situation, which you are not separate from, will carry you into it in an appropriate way. So what was the, I can't remember the 5. True, is it true? And then timely. And is this appropriate time to bring something up? So timely would be, if you don't have to say anything, don't say anything. So if you have something to say and you notice, you just look at the whole situation, and if you look at the whole situation, then that thing that was arising will see if there's a space, if there's an openness to bring that topic up, or if not, there are things that I've been wanting to talk about for a long time that there's not been an opening for it. That's why I always say, ask me questions about everything. Don't hold back. So that because I always do this mutually, much as I can. I sit up here and give a talk, which I'm not too sure how to do that. I certainly couldn't teach a class on public speaking. Yes. So what were those 5? Anybody write them down?
True, timely, gentle,
purposeful,
and mind of loving kindness.
Yeah. So not a bad thing for the Buddha to say 2,500 years ago to his 16-year-old recruits. Yes.
What does it mean to have gentle speech?
The way I would talk about that, I probably wouldn't use that word. I would just say less is better, and wait for the period. It's when you're talking with someone, just wait for them to stop talking. You could wait for the period at the end of their statement, and even wait a minute after that. Of course, you're running a terrible risk. They're going to keep talking, which would be really, I mean, my goodness. You could change your body language, like, I'm ready to respond. Or you could actually risk it and just let them allow that space and see. It would be gentle because there would be no aggression in your response. You may say something, you may not. If you watch someone's facial expression just before they begin to talk, it's like they leave and they go into another world, and then they come out with speech. Everyone here, not accusing you of anything particularly, but everyone here has a what do they call them, tells? In poker they call it a tell when you're thinking about something. You know about those? Yes.
Can we speak without leaving?
It's possible. Michael.
I'm wondering, are you saying that gossip and actual true talk are just the same? Or would it be better to say not separate?
Well, fundamentally, things are not separate. Before we go to the ultimate nature, we might need to work in the relative area a little bit. Just like you're already awake, so why meditate? Well, that's because you don't realize what awakening is. So we have to sit down and watch delusion over and over and over. That's what the Buddha did. He looked at delusion, saw what it was completely. This is what we call awakening. He didn't go to another, he didn't abandon delusion to go to something else. He stayed with the delusion, saw the delusion, and this is what I, as a Dharma teacher, am asking you to do. Sit down and be nuts. Be crazy. Sit, hold still, hold very still so you can see the mechanics of insanity. And I'm not accusing you of being insane. You might be insane. Or you might be accusing yourself, yes.
Just coming back to the idea of gentle speech.
Yes.
Does gentle speech have to be the opposite of aggressive speech?
I would say we have to use relative words, or anytime you say anything, you have its opposite automatically or right away. But I think it's just about being with, don't miss much. Watch if you're talking to a particular person, watch their body language. When I say language, I'm not saying there's any, like some kind of meaning behind it necessarily, but, and then see if they're hearing what you're saying. See if what you're saying, you have to badger them about it. If they're not, if their body language starts to droop or something, then you could just end your conversation. You could say it several ways. Say, well, I've got things to, you're in the monastery, I've got things to do, I'll talk to you later. Just leave. Yes, sir.
What is the relationship between gossip and authority? Reading, when I came in, there's a list I didn't notice there before about the advisories is to not have gossip, dharma gossip, without speaking with you.
Yeah, and I'm the authority. I think the idea is that we need to have some kind of guideline or some kind of touchstone, just like we need a wall to sit in front of. We need to wear clothes. We need to have some kind of what's commonly called, when I say commonly, I don't know how commonly, but Trungpa Rinpoche called natural hierarchy. And so it's not natural hierarchy for someone to take charge and push people around. The unnatural hierarchy, military is a really artificial, unnatural hierarchy based on warfare, on the belief that you have to fight anything you're opposed to. It's a painful situation, but culturally we're just completely mired in it. And so there's no way to get out of that and try to soften things up, particularly, even though there are countries, Scandinavian countries, are less going in that direction. But what we can do is we can sit down and train our minds. And what you find in this situation, I'm not saying this is true of a monastery in Japan. They are more culturally, used a descriptive word, hopefully it's descriptive, macho. Somebody's got to be in charge. Somebody's right. Other people are wrong. We don't do that here. So you'll find, talk to the people who live here and find out how authoritarian this person is. See, find out how that really shows up for people. I think that might be a better way to understand it rather than for me to give some kind of abstraction, because it's like what I talk about is the way I do it. I say, don't do anything unless you have to, and I don't. If you see me doing something, I have to do it. And if you see me doing something, I didn't make a choice. It wasn't like I don't decide to come in here and do this. If I could decide to do this, I'd stay home. Wouldn't you stay home? Well, more about that, Joseph. It's a really good question. That's why I'm asking. Can you go in and go deeper with it, or where you're coming from?
A lot of different directions. I mean, one is the Facebook gossip, and there seems to be a lack of hierarchy in the general how we talk to each other, and how there just seems to be like a dichotomy that people are very angry at each other. Like where, where is the hierarchy? Like so that gossip is loving.
Yeah. Are we specifically talking about Facebook or Twitter? I don't think we're going to be able to do much with that. That's, I mean, you know, even Zuckerberg is off the deep end. He's just a very, very pretentious, immature, multi-billionaire who's really smart. I think he's deliberately trying to be mean. You know, like most billionaires aren't trying to be; they just feel totally empowered and privileged. You know, they have it, you don't, and too bad. Also true of the founder of Apple, who was, interestingly enough, we shared as the same Dharma teacher. I don't know how much Steve Jobs actually learned from Cobenchino. There's pictures of him, they romanticize it a little bit, but if I know Coben, and I don't, but I probably know him a little better than Steve Jobs based on his activity. And you could call this gossiping a little bit. I think Coben would have, I think Coben would have said, don't do that. I happen to know someone who was doing a lot of artwork, and I could even say his name, Shoho. And Coben told him, said, don't exhibit, just be a Sunday painter. Don't exhibit anywhere. Just paint pictures. Of course, that's the way Coben functioned. He wouldn't even let anyone publish a book of his talks during his lifetime. So, but that idea of authority is a very, very interesting area. It's that the authority is there, but then how does that authority manifest? As one of Coben's teachings, as you've probably heard me repeat it, because I've repeated it many times, is get your own authority. You might have to work with a teacher in order to understand what that is. And you should work with a teacher who did that or is doing that. Yes.
Could you go a little bit deeper in why he didn't want people to publish him and why he would tell someone not to exhibit?
I don't know. Because I wasn't able to ask him, but my sense was if you're a practitioner, then he might have had some idea of what was happening with that person as taking the big view of beyond life and death, which he was able to do, and it might have just been a suggestion. Maybe you could just be a Sunday painter. Don't try to get famous. Fame, best thing that ever happened to me from the point of view of the spiritual path, is to be not particularly talented at art. I do okay, but not very good. That was good. Good thing. Bad from the point of view of art, good from the point of view of the spiritual path.
What was good about that?
I didn't get all hung up in how wonderful I am and what a great painter I am, and I'm part of this school and that school, and my paintings sell for, thousands of dollars and so on. That's what's good about it. Being sucked into the 8 worldly dharmas, praise and blame, success, failure, that kind of. Yes.
Is that where Jobs was sucked in?
I think he was, but he and I wasn't there, so I'm speculating. You could call this gossip, other than I'm sitting here talking to everyone, so it might take on a little bit different tone. So I have to say, with a preamble, I have no idea for sure, but there's a little bit of that happening there. You had a question? Did it go away?
You said, I forgot it.
I know. Yeah, you're a student of mine. You forget things. Go ahead.
Paraphrasing, earlier you said practice is sitting at the wall looking at insanity. How does that cultivate sanity?
I don't know if you could use the word cultivate, but what it does is by sitting there and just receiving the mind that goes this way, the mind that goes that way, There are other ways of doing this. Some people teach. I taught for years. I was trained to teach, sit down, and the way I was taught myself and taught people to train their mind is try to be a good meditator. In other words, try to settle down, follow your breath, and try to get as stable as possible. And I do it the other way around. I say, sit down and look at the instability. Stop trying to get rid of instability based on your ideas about it. Actually sit down, be genuine, be a mess. The only thing you can have any say-so over, basically, is your body position. You can't go into your mind and do much. And if you go into your mind and do something and think you're accomplishing something with the mind, then that could be very circular. In other words, why and because, and why and because, and why and because. Not wrong. There's also times when doing a very definite practice, I think, is important. And I have some people doing very, very definite practices. But I work with them on that rather than assign it to someone. I don't just assign it to someone and say, well, go do that. Like what happened to me. Yes?
Question from Sheldon down in Union City. He asks, is all conversation gossip?
Quite a bit of it is. I know. Just not to be confessional, but you and I gossip about stuff. Why did they do that? Why did they paint their house that color? That's terrible. So we do some of that, but I think it's when it tightens down into some area where you're actually talking about someone else or about someone where you don't really know the whole thing, and you're being a little bit mean or vindictive or something like that. And I don't think we're doing too much of that. Maybe some. And again, this isn't so important. Don't correct that. If you feel yourself doing that, let it function there for a while so that you can see it. Because if you're trying to get rid of it, this just strengthens the ego. Someone who got rid of something, who no longer gossips. I don't know how else to say it. I wish I could say it more clearly. Yes.
How can we look at the 5
marks?
Yes, of right speech without building up or reifying someone who is determining whether this is true or whether this is gentle?
Yeah. So I think that part of it's a good question, and that part of it has to do with one word: patience. So what happens is when we go in to look at something, we want results. We want, and if this gets too strong, this is what's called spiritual materialism. It's materialistic to want something else. So what we do is we use these concepts, these ideas, these marks that the Buddha spoke so many centuries ago, and we look at gentleness. We look at, is it true? And we just look at the intentionality of the whole thing without actually going in and trying to get the concept to be correct. I mean, we're not talking about a rubber stamp situation where true, gentle, let's see, loving kindness, we need that stamp on there. So I think it's a willingness to be wrong. It's a willingness to be in the area, in the kind of a netherworld between something that's timely or not timely. It's, if you don't know if is this timely or not, you might allow that might tend to fluctuate a little bit. In other words, breathe. It might breathe. Things need to breathe. That's why we don't set up standards. That's why those who are setting up really intense standards to make sure nobody does anything wrong it's just a misunderstanding. And the intention quite often is to make sure nothing goes wrong. Make sure everybody follows the rules. But if you do that too much, then too much structure, then you have people who have all the credentials and to help to do certain special education or something like that and do a terrible job. They're just good at getting credentials. Then you get somebody else who would be a wonderful person to do that kind of work, but they don't have the time, the education, they don't have the training, but they're a natural for it. They just would be natural. We don't have a structure in our society to do that kind of thing. Yeah. Yes.
If someone points out when we've been gossiping.
Yeah.
And there's embarrassment about that. Should there be an effort to correct that in some way?
I think that's a very relative, very subjective, actually. But if that happens, then that would there's so many causes and conditions around that. First of all, if it's your mom, your dad, or if it's in a family situation, that's a whole different area. If it's in your workplace, that's has a different kind of connotation. If it's someone that is actually functionally over you as a leader or guide, like if it's me, and you've asked me to function as a teacher, which in your case you have, and I rarely tell you what to do if you haven't noticed, other than we have a strong form here. So, but if you come and things are functioning in a way that I see are not particularly workable in that area, I might say something to you about it. Then you would just receive that as being someone helping you see what that is. Especially in the monastery, the gossip level here is pretty low. I'm not saying it's not there, but it doesn't get very far. Yes.
Question from Anne Marie in Santa Fe.
Yes.
She asks, I am not understanding your comments about Steve Jobs, around Steve Jobs. Would you please share more about what you are meaning?
What I'm meaning is, and this is gossip, because I don't know, but I was saying that Steve and, say, Shoho were both students of his. And Shoho still paints paintings, and Shoho was told, don't, and this is something Shoho told me, so it's not that gossipy. Don't just be a Sunday painter, don't paint. And I have never met Steve Jobs, so all I get from that situation is what? Gossip, kind of. On the other hand, there's a quality there of knowing Coben, of feeling like he was helped quite a bit financially by Steve Jobs, because Steve Jobs was, as we all know, was pretty successful. But my comment isn't so much to put him down or make him bad or something like that. He just got carried away with his empire, and so that's my comment. There's other things I could be saying about it, but that would just be more gossip. And I don't think that Coben was necessarily telling him to, go make millions, take over the world, be one of the biggest corporations that's ever existed. If you want to talk to me, if you wanted to talk to me personally about it, I might say more, but I just want to gossip with you personally. You know what I mean. So, and again, it's let me say this one more thing, and then I'll respond to Shodo, and then I think we have to go to a daily Dharma gathering. But it's not about stopping the gossip. You could use those 5 marks to kind of see when you're talking, or when you're where you detect some gossip. You could see, is it timely? Is it true? Is there some truth to it? Is it partial? Is it? You could add something that's not there that I would say to ask is, look at your intention for saying anything at all. But I often say, I'm saying now, don't do anything unless you have to. I wouldn't be sitting in this if I didn't have to do this. And I would do this if nobody came. I've actually done this when nobody's come. So,
Is that different from saying that if no one showed up, you would go home?
well, I would come, and then I might come in for a few weeks, and then if nobody came over, I'd give it some time, and then I would use that time to see what it feels like to sit here by myself. And think, I thought I was a teacher, but apparently I had no students, so I guess I'm not a teacher. I probably wouldn't be anybody to, Cody'd be in Traverse City, or he'd be in Honduras with Brittany. Honduras, don't go there. So, it's I would give it a lot of room to see what it was going to do. It's unlikely that's going to happen, though it could. I've had individuals actually leave, and some with explanations, some with just nothing, just gone. No idea. No idea.
What if the opposite, like this turn massive, it seems to me that that would be a problem to something being massive and keeping its virtue.
I'm not sure if I'm following you.
Well, he said if no one showed up, but I think that's safer than if thousands of people showed up to listen to you, or
Yeah, I like
just
that.
anything that
Yeah, that's
gets
good.
massive can lose its
Yeah.
essence and virtue.
Oh, yeah, that's a better statement than a question. That's just true. Yeah, I don't want lots. I don't want, this is fine. We have plenty of room in here. These are enough people.
But how can other things, what's the equilibrium between reaching and helping, and then the virtue defeats the origin that founded. Is it possible to have an equilibrium between reaching and to be like a positive change, or that's not something we should?
If I understand you, I would say, yes, it's possible. I understand what you're saying. We need to move to the next the teaching, the daily Dharma gathering, which some people are subscribed to and some people are not. So it won't be. It'll only be through the daily Dharma gathering. It'll be broadcast. But anyone who's in here can stay for this talk. It's going to be on embodiment, which is something.
Opening the sense perceptions.
Yeah. So has anybody a list of the sense perceptions? I sometimes forget what they are. That's meant to be humorous.
So we'll stand and dedicate the merit in the back of our yellow chant books. And I'd like to remind everybody about the donation boxes that are in the back hallway. We always appreciate and depend on your financial support. We also receive donations through PayPal, debit, and credit cards.
May the mirror of this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Ji-o-san, shi-fu, shi-son, mu-sa, mo-ko-san, the 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna, Paramita.
O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokukoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with life.